is Tom Horn. Brother Tom, I just first want to thank you for joining us here on Interstellar Realities Radio. And how are you doing this afternoon, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great. We're really busy right now with all of our latest projects, and thank you for having me on your program again, Steve.
Well, the last time we talked, we discussed Zenith 2016, and by the way, it's an honor to have you. And praise the Lord for this, but that show has been just averaging thousands and thousands of views over the last 7 weeks. It's been shared and commented on and liked. I mean, every week, thousands and thousands of views. And it's really just had a tremendous response. And Brother Tom, it just confirms my suspicion that this material is sought after, and people want to know what is happening in the world around them. Now, today we will shift our focus to your new book, On the Path of the Immortals, and there's quite a gap between Zenith 2016 On the Path of the Immortals. I understand that. What a provocative title, On the Path of the Immortals. But before we launch out into this, would you just give us an update of what is happening with your television programs, your websites, and then please just take it from there, and if you can, start at the beginning and tell us all, what is this book, On the Path of the Immortals, all about?
Yeah, okay, Steve. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be able to do that. As far as, all of our new endeavors, we started out years ago. I had pastored for 25 years. I stopped pastoring as a hobby. I started a little online thing called Raiders News Update that just grew and grew and grew and grew, and our mailing list started getting huge, and people were wanting us to publish, so we started publishing books under Defender Publishing. And then the demand, of course, has been, over the last decade, more and more that people want video content because, everybody's carrying around handheld devices, and a lot of times they don't have time to read a book, so they want video. So we realize that we've really got to do both. We've got to print book materials, but we also have to produce video and television content. So we knew that ultimately, if we were going to keep going down this track, we were going to have to start a television program, but that would also have a mobile-ready online presence as well. And the old Raiders News Update that we had built was, a frames-based system that most people couldn't look at in their smartphones or iPads, that kind of thing. So the whole last year has just been, just a tremendous amount of effort to create media-ready content online where people can go there with their handheld devices and whatever. We changed the name from Raiders News Update to skywatchtv.com, so that's the new web presence, skywatchtv.com, which is web-ready. And now we're producing daily video updates on the news, which take the news headlines but then break them down into a biblical context. And some of that, of course, is also prophetic context. And then we have a weekly 30-minute program that's playing. It plays on the Internet once a week, but it also plays on television, on DirecTV, the Dish Network. I forget how many channels, but it's been, and that's been very successful. We've had a big response from that, and we're getting ready to expand to more television presence as well. And then what the public doesn't yet know is that we also are negotiating right now with a documentary film company, and in fact, I'll be sitting down with them in about a week, I hope, and we are going to launch Defender Films. The very first film is partly already done, called Inhuman. It's on the transhumanist movement. We were able to travel the world and get the world's leading transhumanists. We also got members of the U.S. President's Council on Bioethics. We got university professors, and then we got those who could put all of this into a prophetic context as well. And we're hoping that within 2 to 3 months from now, we'll be releasing the new documentary called Inhuman. But that's going to be a whole new side of what we're doing. And anyway, it's been breathless, I tell you. But I'm probably having more fun than I should be allowed to have. You said that we've kind of become the Indiana Jones of Christian publishing and Christian filmmaking, and it feels that way to us too. I have on my staff now full-time 2 private investigators that work only for me. God has blessed us so that I also have an additional 10 people that they do script writing, they do field investigative work, they do whatever we need them to be able to do, and they also split their time in the warehouse. Derek and Sharon Gilbert were the latest two that came to work for us full-time. Derek's producing daily television. Sharon, of course, has degrees in biology, so she's very important to what we will be developing on the science side. So anyway, lots of stuff, right? Now, how did we get to this new book, On the Path of the Immortals? The book's already the number one selling book in several categories. We've been getting media requests everywhere. We're on primetime network television right now on programs like the Jim Baker Show and others. We're also doing all of our old favorite shows like Your Show and Coast to Coast AM and Caravan to Midnight tomorrow and other programs later today that I'm not even sure who it is. They're just going to be calling me and we're doing radio programs. But how did we get here? What's very interesting about this, Steve, is this has been in the hands of God from the beginning. We never set out to write the first of the three books Chris Putnam and I have done together, Petrus Romanus. We never sat down and said, hey, this would be a cool idea, let's write this book. It just came to us that you had a 900-year-old prophecy. It's not a biblical prophecy. It could be a fraud. It could be demonic. It could be divine. We took a very critical view of it in our book, Petrus Romanus, The Final Pope is Here. But we wrote the book just purely given the fact that you have a 900-year-old prophecy, and regardless of where it came from, it's a historical document, and it was set to come to an end with the election of whatever pope was going to follow Pope Benedict. Now, Chris and I took a very brave step forward. We produced, I think, and this mostly goes to Chris's credit because he's really the theologian, I'm not, but we produced, I think, probably the best book that was ever produced on the subject of this 900-year-old prophecy called The Prophecy of the Popes. And it takes a critical view of it, but it says maybe there's something going on here that we don't quite understand. Based on some of our investigation, we were able to determine that if the Catholic Church was following, that we believed that one way or another, Pope Benedict would be forced to step down or would voluntarily step down. And we predicted that 1 year in advance. We even said the month that he would resign. Now, at the time we were out there doing radio and talking about it, people, Catholic bloggers and stuff, they were saying, well, these guys are evangelical. They don't even know what they're talking about. No, popes don't resign. Popes stay in office until they die. Then, lo and behold, Benedict stepped down exactly the same month that we said he was going to, the first pope to have done that in 400 years. And we had media all over the world then wanting to know, including Catholic media, wanting to know who is your insider, right? Who at the Vatican was leaking information to you. And so all of a sudden the media everywhere wanted to talk to us. So now we're out there. We're doing all these programs. It was a documentary film based on what we had predicted that was produced by WorldNet Daily Films. The History Channel did programs on our predictions, things like that. So we're out there now doing all this media, and people around the world were calling in. And whenever it was a talk show where there was opportunity, for people to call in and ask a question, we started getting a question that was coming in from around the world, and it was this. Okay, prophecy of the popes, blah, 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 but what do you make of the Vatican now suddenly being out there with their leading astronomers, their top astronomers, saying that besides this whole prophecy of the popes thing, we now would be willing to baptize aliens, and it's more likely than not that aliens exist, extraterrestrial intelligence, not just microorganisms, but advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. And people would call into those programs. What do you think of that? What do you make of that? And Chris and I hadn't really tried to wrap our head around why over the last 36 months, all of a sudden the Vatican's got Guy Consolmagno, who's the Pope's personal astronomer and also one of the leading astronomers for the Church, who splits his time between Gandolfo, Italy, and Mount Graham in Arizona. Why is he out there saying I would baptize an alien? And why is the leader of the Borg, the Vatican Observatory Research Group, Jose Gabriel Funes, who's also a leading astronomer for the Catholic Church, he's out there not only saying he would be willing to baptize an alien, what he's saying is even more disturbing. He's saying that the aliens are actually coming here and they're going to baptize us because we're fallen. We're separated from God except for the propitiatory work of Jesus Christ, but they may not be fallen. And if they haven't fallen, and they're God's creation, they not only would be our brothers, they'd be morally superior to us, and they're going to be coming here to baptize us into their faith. And it may change. And you should know this, Steve, and your listeners. Right now, at the Pope's University in Rome, there are Opus Dei level theologians, top level theologians for the church that are right now writing doctrine that's going to go through the process that it has to go through to be accepted before it can be approved by the church, writing doctrine that says that information may soon come from an extraterrestrial source that may change everything we think we have ever known about the gospel. It may require us to change literally our understanding of God and of the gospel. And that theology is being written right now. So they're moving almost as if they're preparing for a kind of official disclosure moment. So anyway, not to get bogged down, we're out there doing shows on Petrus Romanus. People are calling in. Why is the Vatican talking about all this stuff all of a sudden? And here's what Chris and I determined. We talked about this. We said, the only way that we can provide an authoritative answer to this question, where is the Vatican coming from with all this talk about aliens, is so that we don't just come across as a couple of evangelicals out there taking cheap shots at the church's astronomers or being accused of taking them out of context or whatever. We decided the only way to do that was we was going to have to go to the horse's mouth. We were going to have to go to the top of Mount Graham in Arizona and meet with the Vatican's Jesuit astronomers and ask them face-to-face where they are coming from. We took a camera crew with us. Now, people listening to this show ought to know, you don't just get in your car and drive to the top of Mount Graham and jump out and say, we're here to see the aliens. This place is highly protected. It has law enforcement. There are huge fences miles down from the observatory, with signs on the fences in several languages describing all the terrible things they're going to do to you if you try to climb over that fence and get up to Mount Graham. You can't just go up there. So I had to negotiate this through the Arizona State University. God gave us favor. We got permission. We had to go with a guide that works with ASU that had keys to the gates and that could get us up there. Long story short, if a person wants to know that whole story, that's where this all started kind of becoming Indiana Jones. In fact, people that have read the book, the second book that was written based on that trip to Mount Graham, called Exo Vaticana, that's the book that when people read it, they said, man, it was just like an Indiana Jones movie going up the side of that mountain. We're giving that book away free. We're giving away the first one, Petrus Romanus. We're giving away several other books. We're giving away 2 documentary movies, and one of those documentaries is not available anywhere whatsoever. It's not available. It's not for sale. It's exclusive to Skywatch TV. It's 2.5 hours long, and it is the special investigative report that starts at Mount Graham, but then it goes to this new work on the path of the immortals, which I'll summarize quickly in a moment. We're giving that away. Also, Nita and I wrote a novel that became a bestseller called The Ahriman Gate, which deals with all this stuff of UFOs and aliens and ancient giants and DNA and all those things, but it puts it in the form of a novel. That book has like a $40 million movie contract on it, but it's never been made into an audio book. And now, for the first time, it's been produced as a fully dramatized audio book, 8 hours long. We're giving that away. So if people want to go to skywatchtv.com, they'll see the big ad up on the top, and they'll see if they buy from us the book On the Path of the Immortals, if they get that through a donation there to the Skywatch Television Ministry, they're going to get like $200 worth of product, but it includes these books I'm talking about. It includes Petrus Romanus, includes Ex Vaticana, and a bunch of other stuff. So just thought I'd throw that out there. So we go up to the mountain. We get up there. We meet with the Vatican's astronomers, the Jesuits, and we ask them pointed questions like, what was Father Malachi Martin talking about in 1997 when he was on Coast to Coast AM? And Art Bell said, Father Martin, why did the Vatican force their way onto a mountain in Arizona? What are they doing up there? And Malachi, as you might recall, kind of ignited a firestorm when he said they're on the top of that mountain because at the highest levels of the Vatican governance and geoprudence, he said they know what is approaching the earth and that it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. Now, people can go to YouTube, and they can actually Google that, and they can listen to Malachi Martin making those very comments from 1997 off of Coast to Coast AM. So we asked about that. They admitted to us they are monitoring something, and they're not just monitoring something. Get this. There's actually 3 large telescopes on the top of Mount Graham. The first one is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, where we visited. They let us climb all over the telescope. We looked at everything there. There's a radioscope we also went to, but the third telescope, which is the highest one up on the top of the mountain, is the largest telescope of its kind in the world. This is the large binocular telescope. It's used by astronomers all over the world. They actually have to apply and get in line to get permission to use it because everybody everywhere wants to use it. But that's the building in which we were shown the LUCIFER device, and that is actually what it's called, which is a piece of infrared technology, very advanced infrared technology, which they are using to monitor whatever this is that is approaching the Earth. Well, anyway, people can read all about it, get the book Ex Vaticana for free with that giveaway thing we're doing over there at Skywatch TV. So we come down off the mountain. I'm really rushing past all that information. We come down off the mountain. We're feeling really good about ourselves. We're thinking, man, oh man, we have the story of a lifetime. And we send the book to the typesetter. It goes to the printer. It becomes an all-time international best-selling book, Ex Vaticana. And now we're out there doing radio on Ex Vaticana. And all of a sudden, and this is where this new work on the path of the immortals came from, I get contacted by a member of the Apache Nation. He was listening to us on the radio, and he was listening to us talk about how the Apache had joined environmentalists in Arizona and had filed a federal lawsuit to try to stop the Vatican and NASA from going up onto the top of that mountain. That's a story all by itself, by the way, how the governor of Arizona must have had somebody at the Vatican deep in his back pocket because he had to literally do an in-run around environmental law and essentially declared by fiat that they were going to be allowed to go up there and build that mountain. That's a story all by itself, which we include in Ex Vaticana. But anyway, so the Vatican gets to go up there to build their observatory and work with NASA. Well, this Apache had heard me talking about that, and what I had said on a program was the Apache did not want them on that mountain because the mountain, I assume, is something like sacred ground to them in the sense that they obviously were here before we were. Their forefathers and foremothers had lived and died on the mountain, and so it's something kind of like a graveyard. It's sacred to them. Well, he wanted me to know that I had missed the point entirely. And this was where things started getting cryptic and kind of astonishing to me. And we had to vet all this, but he let me know that the reason that the Apache had fought so diligently to keep the Vatican and NASA off of Mount Graham is because Mount Graham is, for them, one of the 4 holiest mountains in all of the world for all American indigenous people, and it is because Mount Graham is, in their opinion, in their worldview, in their history, that mountain is a stargate. It is a doorway. It is a portal. It is a location, a strategic location where since the dawn of time, the American Indians have recorded entities that move in and out of Earth's reality through a mystical doorway there. Now, when he said that, the first thing we did was we went and vetted that. We had to make sure that that wasn't just some New Age hippie making up information. We found out that, in fact, Mount Graham is one of the four holiest mountains, and it is very connected to their most ancient legends and lore, which are completely tied to creation, to giants, to all kinds of things that came in and out of this reality. So once we were able to vet that information, I got to tell you, Steve, the conspiracy meter went into the red zone in our head when we started saying, wait a minute, of all mountains, really? Why would the Vatican, why would they have been willing to fight all the way through a federal court to build an observatory on Mount Graham? Why not just go to another mountain where nobody's going to sue you? Get the same elevation, build whatever it is you want to build. There's been plenty of states that have been happy to have, that built in their state. Why would you go through this hassle, this legal process, attorneys and money and all that, fighting and fighting and fighting against these Indians so you could build on that mountain, only for us to learn, because it is one of the four mystical mountains, the most holiest mountains in the world, and it is because it is a doorway, it is a portal. And now then in our mind the question was raised, wow, I mean, is there something here about this mountain in the United States of America that the Catholic Church is aware of? Does this go back to Malachi Martin saying they're there because from there they are monitoring something that is approaching the world that perhaps they can't see from somewhere else? I mean, we just were almost overtaken by this, and we said, okay, we have got a lot of work to do. And so for the last 1.5 years, secretly, nobody knew about this, we have been working on this project where we, and here's another thing, the American Indians don't like talking to us white people, us non-tribal members, because they've been burned a lot of times by New Agers that take their information and then go out there and turn it into all kinds of weirdness. And so they're very, very protective. The Hopi won't talk to you at all. Some of the other Pueblo-type Indians that are the older tribes in the nation, they may talk to you a little bit kind of off the record, but they will not let you film them. And they, in fact, they won't even let you take notes while you're talking to them. Wow. And they won't let you record them. So it took us 1.5 years, and finally, through a whole process, we were able to get a sit-down with the Navajo Nation's third-generation oral historian, an academic in the Navajo Nation. He's written books that they teach in their universities and schools, and he is a third-generation medicine man. And of all things, this might be the first time this has ever happened in modern history. He allowed us to put him on film for 3 hours talking to us about these mountains and about the stories and about what some people might call legend and myth, and yet what we found was it matched up perfectly with Old Testament history about creation, about the giants, about the flood. So that's what the whole book is about, On the Path of the Immortals. But the subplot, which is actually the more important part of this book, is an examination of whether or not it is biblical to believe that there could be strategic and specific geographical locations around the world that might be thought of as stargates or doorways or portals. I actually kind of dislike all those words, but you have to create a mental image so people understand. You're talking about a specific place that for whatever reason provides, I don't know if the veil is thinner there, I don't know. But is it biblical to believe that such locations exist? Secondly, is it biblical that entities came in and through those portals? And that became the research, and we actually, in our book, we were amazed once we started actually doing all of the research of both what's in the Bible and also what's in ancient records around the world about these gateways of the earth, and then even the fact that this is probably the most overlooked aspect of end times Bible prophecy. people are out there talking about everything in Bible prophecy right now. You don't hear anybody saying, oh, and by the way, the Bible also predicts that there are gateways of the earth, portals, doorways, and they are going to open at the end of time, and things are going to come up out of the earth. And when you really start looking at what the Scripture says about that, it changes your worldview about the world. The earth itself is dynamic. The earth is described in Scripture as having all kinds of intelligent, powerful beings that exist inside the earth. Some of them are imprisoned there, being held there until the time the doors open and they surface to the earth as part of the Great Tribulation. So that's what the book On the Path of the Immortals is what happened, the information that we learned after we came off Mount Graham, and then when we started looking at this critically from a biblical worldview and even a prophetic worldview, and we became convinced that not only did this stuff happen in the past, it's also going to happen again.
Wow, that's incredible information. You know, we were just talking on Monday night with Dr. Michael Lake. Of course, you've interviewed him on your show, Skywatch TV, and he has the book out now, The Shinar Directive. And we were talking about some of these same kind of things. And I was going to ask you about on the Path of the Immortals, as you were talking about Mount Graham, Dr. Lake talked about he believes that some of these, I don't know, you call them secret society, shadow government, or the highest ups in the world, whoever that may be, or maybe even meeting and talking with some of the fallen angels or some of, you know, these spirits that are getting ready to manifest and do some of these things. Do you think it's possible that on top of Mount Graham there's a little bit more going on up there than just some telescopes looking at outer space?
Yeah, I actually do. And again, this goes back to Father Malachi Martin saying that the reason they fought to get on that mountain is because from that mountain they are able to observe something that is approaching the earth. And what's also interesting is that Malachi said, he put kind of a timeline on that. If you go and listen to the interview that he did, he believed that in approximately 10 years, now he said he was estimating, but he believed that in about 10 years from the time that he had made that commentary, that this was going to become of global importance. Now, what's interesting about that is that almost 10 years later to the date, in 2009, what happens but that the Vatican, they abruptly call for an astrobiology study week. And so they have the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, whom, by the way, Pope Francis has had a relationship with going way back before he became the Pope. They call together the scientists for the Vatican. They get 30 or so of the most powerful astronomers in the world. They also get geologists, theoretical physicists, but more importantly, they get together the church's top theologians. And what was this whole week about? They discuss what will the impact be on faith, on religion, given the disclosure or the discovery of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence in the universe. Now, 90 days later, the Royal Society, now we're talking about the oldest scientific body in the world, they convene a meeting in the United Kingdom. And imagine this scientific body, it's 350 years old. They've never done this before, but 90 days after the Vatican, they come together to discuss, guess what? The detection of extraterrestrial life and the consequences for science and society. And that was the point in time when the media then was in a frenzy, because the Vatican had some of their people at the Royal Academy meeting too. The leader of the Royal Academy at that time was Lord Martin Rees, the Queen's astronomer royal. And he was making some comments that sounded revealing. He was saying, he said, and people can Google and read this for themselves, he said aliens are watching us in a way that we're not even aware of. I mean, and other people who were speaking there that were university professors were using loaded terms like, unprecedented evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. So it was, and this only 36 months ago. So now what has happened since that time? Since that time, the Vatican has continued down this path, but now their language about the aliens is changing. It's going from we would baptize aliens to the aliens are coming here to baptize us. And right now, the Pope's astronomer, Guy Consolmagno, who, by the way, after we put out our book, Ex Vaticana, because he allowed me to interview him 5 times from Rome, he's got a book that he wrote, and this is part of the story, called Intelligent Life in the Universe. And as soon as it was coming out, because it has to do with the Catholic worldview of extraterrestrial intelligence, what the relationship there might be, I should actually call it a booklet, because I think it's only about 100 pages long. When that book was coming out, it was being published by the Vatican Truth Society, a Vatican-owned publishing house, and I ordered a copy of it. But before it was even in print, I pre-ordered a copy of the book. I was out there doing shows with Steve Quayle talking about, hey, the Vatican's going to put out a book from Guy Consolmagno explaining their point of view with regard to the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence and whatever. And but I never got my copy. And so I kept pressing with the Vatican Truth Society, and I found out that before the book had barely, it comes out in print, and literally 5 to 6 days later, the Vatican pulls it. They pull it from the market, and it appeared that they actually took a concerted effort to recover every copy that might have made it into the market, and you could not get that book anywhere whatsoever. So when I was interviewing Guy Consolmagno, I didn't let him know, that we were going, because I didn't know at the time I'd give the book away if I could get it from him. But I just briefly said in an email to him, I said, by the way, I said, your book, Intelligent Life in the Universe, it isn't available anywhere. I can't find a PDF anywhere. Do you happen to have a copy I could read? Well, lo and behold, he emails me his copy of the PDF. And so what we've been doing is making his PDF available to anybody that emails us and requests it, because that book is astonishing. Because what he does is he talks about how the aliens were here once before. And when I asked him about that, I said, "You guys are out there saying that aliens are coming. They're more intelligent than we are. They're more advanced than we are. They've got a better comprehension of the gospel than we do. I mean, where in the world are you coming with this?" And he says, "Well, Tom, don't you know that they were here once before?" And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he literally points me to Genesis chapter 6, which is talking about the B'nai Ha-Elohim that left heaven, came down to the earth, interbred with women, gave birth to giants. And I was astonished by that. I emailed him back and I said, "Really?" Well, I would think of this as demonic activity. You're saying that
sure.
the Watchers are the same as the aliens that are going to come back again? Well, then he emails me again, and in essence, all he's doing is quoting his own book at that time. He might have even forgot he gave it to me, because he emails me back and he says, "Well, sure, and furthermore," he said, "it's highly possible that Jesus himself was the offspring of one of these alien races." So I emailed him back again. I'm like, "Brother Consolmagno, this is blowing me away. I mean, are you literally asserting the Catholic Church's view is that Jesus might be a star child, that he was the offspring of what I would call an alien abduction scenario?" And then he quit talking to me. But the point is, that's exactly what he says in this book, and I think that's why it was pulled by the Vatican. Because the quotes that we make of him in the book Ex Vaticana, we didn't take from the email exchanges. We took them out of his book, and then we started making the book available to the public if they requested it. So what then happened was Guy Consolmagno was forced to kind of respond to what the public was saying. Evidently, the Vatican was getting bombarded with emails, and so was the Vatican Observatory Research Group and their Observatory website, bombarded with emails. They were hearing us on radio and television everywhere talking about this, still hearing us talking about it. So Brother Consolmagno goes on to the Vatican Observatory website and tries to explain away that what I was saying was taking him out of context. But I responded to those comments by him by saying, "No, we don't quote one thing that you sent us in an email. All we quote is your book. You wrote it, and here's the book. And anybody that wants it can request it from us." And by the way, Steve, anybody listening to your program that wants a copy of Intelligent Life in the Universe that was pulled by the Vatican and written by their lead astronomer, I'll email it to him. And that's where he makes the case for the Nephilim as being the same kind of advanced aliens that could come back again, and that Jesus was the star child of these alien races. But what it does is it gives you, an open door into the mindset of some of the top-level astronomers and theologians that are writing doctrine now that I think at some point is going to become prevalent even with this new Pope, and I'll tell you why in a second. Actually, I'll tell you why now because I forgot what I was going to... Oh, no, here's what I was going to say. Sorry, I get to going and like I'm an old preacher, right? I get off on a pig trail. Is that Guy Consolmagno then puts out a book, and it's out right. It just came out 3-4 months ago, Would You Baptize an Alien?, where he's trying to kind of downplay what we learned through Exo Vaticana, and he's still saying it's a possibility, but now he's trying to make it sound like they're talking more theoretical about it all. But now, all of a sudden, the Vatican has put Guy Consolmagno on an international tour right now. He is going to universities all around the world right now, giving a lecture, and the lecture is, Would You Baptize an Alien? So they haven't slowed down. They're still talking about this information, but here's something that I think is going to become of the utmost importance, and maybe even this year. There is a buzz now, and it's among the conservative Catholics. And it's coming out in two ways. One, that this upcoming encyclical by the Pope on the environment might include something that changes church doctrine, but that links Pope Francis as a Jesuit to something connected to extraterrestrial intelligence and even Stargate concepts. Now, what do I mean by that? There is a doctrine, it's really popular among some of the hierarchy in Rome. Pope Benedict liked this doctrine. Lots of people like it. We don't yet know what Pope Francis's opinion on it is. Some of the church theologians like it. They talk about it a lot. Father Tanzelaniti, for instance, is Opus Dei level. He's one of the guys writing the theology for the Pontifical Academy in Rome. But the theory is generally called many worlds, just many worlds. And now, what is meant by many worlds? This is something that even the Mormons espouse to. It's the idea that God created many worlds that are like the earth, where there are other intelligent beings, and that the earth is really only one of a coalition of worlds that are all owned by God. And that's kind of where the Vatican is coming from. That they've even said lately that it is more likely than not that there is advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. They've even gone further than that. Jose Funes recently wrote that to not believe in extraterrestrial intelligence is heresy, because it puts limits on God's creative ability. So all of a sudden, those conservatives like us that might say this could be an alien deception, in their opinion, we are heretics. They're the ones that are right, because they're willing to open arm, accept these extraterrestrial intelligences as our morally superior brothers, and so on. Now, so the Pope's encyclical, if when he presents his encyclical on the environment, if he uses language, this is what I was told by a Catholic priest to keep an eye on. If he uses language that seems to echo the idea that we are only one of many worlds, and we have a responsibility to those other worlds and to God to be good custodians of this planet, and these other worlds are watching. Angels, whatever you want to call them, on these other worlds are watching us, and we have a responsibility. Here's a better way maybe for the listening audience to kind of grasp what I'm talking about. Do you remember the old movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still?
Sure. I remember hearing they redid that too, I believe.
They did. And so here's the thing. The old original black and white, the alien comes in his big spaceship with his robot, Klaatu Barada Nikto. So they come with a robot, and they warn the Earth that we're developing nuclear weapons. But if we ever think we're going to extend that nuclear presence out into space, they will reduce us to a burned-out cinder. Now, that's the idea behind the first one. But in the remake with Keanu Reeves that came out a couple of years ago, the storyline was changed to reflect this idea of many worlds theology, in that the alien comes, we learn that they've been watching us since forever. We're only one part of a coalition of worlds, But we, humans, are becoming the virus on Earth. We're destroying Gaia. We're destroying this sentient living organism called the Earth, and they can't let us do that. And they're going to wipe us out for the welfare of the Earth. Now, if the Pope's encyclical takes up anything that kind of echoes that line of thinking, it might be step one to a following encyclical that's going to deal with the subject of extraterrestrial life and our responsibility in a many worlds kind of concept. Now, Tom Horn isn't making this up because guess what? Jose Funes, the leader of the Borg, has a relationship going back for a long time with the new Pope, Bergoglio. And Funes, who is also from Argentina, like the Pope is, when he entered the Jesuit order, one of his examiners was Bergoglio. So we were able to establish that there is a relationship between George Bergoglio or Pope Francis and the leader of the Vatican Observatory Research Group, Jose Funes, going back for generations. But in a recent interview with the Catholic press, Funes said something that most of the world read right past and didn't even take note of, but me and Chris Putnam did. He said that this first ever Jesuit Pope is right now busying himself with issues like, gay marriage, and he's a brand new Pope, so he's dealing with all of the kind of entry-level things that a new Pope has to do, establishing his own kind of methodology for, watching over his own doctrinal kind of preferences and so on. But he also this year is issuing this encyclical. He's going to be speaking before the United Nations. He's going to be speaking to a joint session of the United States Congress. Following that, he's going to call together the leader of all of the world's major religions and talk to them about unifying under a common banner for the purposes of both socialistic and also environmentalistic issues like Agenda 21 type things. So this guy's got a lot on his plate. But what Jose Funes said was, he said that as soon as he gets past those issues, he said he is going to turn his attention to astrobiology. Now, when Funes said that, man, that was like a red flare went off in the sky.
Sure.
Because all of these are dominoes that have been falling ever since Benedict stepped down and this first ever Jesuit Pope was elected. Literally, critical things around the world have been happening that are not coincidental. They literally are falling like dominoes towards the goal of a new world order, but what also might be the goals of some kind of official disclosure moment. And so when you ask me if I think elitists around the world, like what Dr. Lake might have been talking about, and by the way, I published his book, and he's a good friend. He only lives about an hour from me. And I'm actually very excited to publish his next book, which hopefully will be coming out before the end of the year. We don't even have a title for it yet. But he's a very cool guy, very smart guy, smarter than I am.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is smarter than I am.
Oh, no. He's a cool guy. As far as who's smarter, man, that's up to you two. You both are great guys in my book.
Well, I can tell you he's smarter than I am. But so there's a lot of intrigue right now that's kind of surrounding the whole issue of what might, in fact, be going on at Mount Graham and elsewhere. And there's a lot to this. Now, let me say something really quick. People that might be listening that would say, well, yeah, but you started out talking about Mount Graham as a portal or a doorway, and that's why the Vatican might be up there, because maybe there's something different about that location than anywhere else as far as what? Their ability to be able to see or communicate with some other intelligence. I mean, this sounds like a sci-fi movie or something. And what in the world does that have to do with the Bible? Well, one of the things that we do in this new book on the path of the immortals is to, and from a scholarly approach, show that the Bible actually has an awful lot to say about this, mountainous locations that could be doorways into what we would call the supernatural realm. Don't forget that when Moses would meet with God, he had to go to the top of the Mount of Sinai, there and nowhere else, and that's where he met with God. When Jesus returns, it says his feet will touch the top of the Mount of Olives, and from there he will descend down to the earth. In the book of Enoch, it talks about in the days of Jared, how 200 very powerful angels came down onto the top of the Mount of Hermon, and from Hermon they descended down into the valley of the plain, and that's where they started their illegal activity with the genetic modification of humans and animals. Years later, the Greeks, to commemorate that, built magical doorways into the bottom of Mount Hermon in Caesarea Philippi. And then they built dedicatories, little alcoves in the side of the mountain there that had statues of the demon god Pan inside of it. But that is where Jesus was standing with his disciples in Caesarea Philippi when he said to them, "The gates of hell will not prevail against my church." And then he goes on to talk about how Jonah was in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. And, of course, if you read the story of Jonah, you find that Jonah's swallowed by a big fish, but he goes down into the bottom of the sea. And there in the Hebrew it says he arrives at Baravak, which in the Hebrew says a city of gates, gates of the earth. And he goes through one of those gates, and he winds up in Sheol Hades, and there's no doubt about where he was because he says God delivered him out of the belly of hell, Sheol Hades, in the belly of the earth. So then Jesus says that just like Jonah was in the earth, he too is going to go down there. And he does. His death, burial, and resurrection, he goes down into the belly of the earth. Now, when he comes up out of the earth, he has keys in his hands, the keys to death, hell, and the grave. This illustrates that not only are there gates, but there's also keys to those gates. And that, too, is something that continues through, for instance, the book of Revelation, chapter 9. A star, an angel, comes down from heaven. What does it say? He has the key to the bottomless pit. And he opens the bottomless pit, and from up out of the earth come this demonic locust horde. And down there in that pit, they have a king over them, Abaddon, who is called in his Greek tongue Apollyon, which is the same spirit that the book of Revelation, chapter 17, and the Apostle Paul, writing to the Thessalonians, say it is that spirit that's going to rise up out of the earth and inhabit the person of the Antichrist. So, and in that list, it literally goes on and on. It's interesting that when you stop for a moment and you start thinking of this idea of stargates, you start noticing how many times the Bible refers, for instance, to the windows of heaven, things that can close and that can be opened. You go back to Numbers 16, and here's the family of Korah, and they're challenging Moses and the Aaronic priesthood, and the earth opens its mouth, opens a gate, and literally swallows them up, and it says they go down alive into Sheol Hades. You go to Genesis chapter 28. Here's Jacob, and he sees angels ascending and descending from the heavens. And a lot of people say that Jacob dedicated that place the next day, and he said, "This is the house of God." Go and read it. That's not what he says. What he says is there is a gate here to the house of God. Genesis 10, Cush begets Nimrod. Nimrod begins to become a giant, is what it says in the Septuagint. He begins to become Gibborim, and immediately he goes to the plains of Shinar. You just interviewed Dr. Lake. His whole book is about this. And what does he do in the plains of Shinar? He goes to a specific location, and he builds a tower whose top will reach into Shamayim, the dwelling place of the watcher angels, the dwelling place of God. And God himself says they will accomplish what they have imagined to do. And what did they imagine to do? To build a tower, the top of which would somehow penetrate Shamayim. So this was one of the things that if a person gets the book On the Path of the Immortals, it's going to take them into a study unlike anything they've ever read before that confirms that the earth itself is dynamic, that there are things that are contained within the earth, even right now, awaiting. And talk about prophecy, you know, like my buddy Joel Richardson's out there right now talking about the Islamic Antichrist, and I can't tell you whether I believe that theory about the Islamic Antichrist or not. I'm thankful he's making it, the whole issue of the Islamic nation, something that the world is thinking about in terms of theology, but think about what they're doing. There they are, right where the Euphrates River flows, and that entire region where the Euphrates River flows is where they are dominating. But read Revelation 9. When this, before this angel with the key to the bottomless pit comes, gates open in the Euphrates, and angels, powerful, terrifying angels, come up out of the Euphrates River. These are fallen angels, and they literally wipe out 1/3 of all humanity. There they are right now, behind gateways of the earth, waiting for that moment, right where the Islamic State believes, the Shia, the Sunni believe in the Mahdi. They don't believe he's here yet, but the Shia 12ers, they believe that he's already here, the Mahdi, and guess what? He's in the earth, he's behind a mystical gate, and when the time is right, that gate is going to open, and he's going to come up out of the earth. So it's amazing how the demonic forces of the world continue to plagiarize the truths that are in the Scripture. But when you start studying the earth itself, you find some amazing things about the earth. It's literally a holding tank. And it literally goes on and on and on. Job 26:5, talking about the dead Raphaim that are squirming under the surface of the earth, just verse after verse. I realize we're running out of time, and I'm going to have to go to another show here in a second. But that's what we do, is we talk about how dynamic the world is, how the most overlooked aspect of end times biblical prophecy is that these gateways of the earth are getting ready to open. There are tons of Scripture. Revelation 9 was one of them. Isaiah 13 is another one, where in Babylon it says the gates are going to open. He says, "Open the gates, ye ruler. I give command." And giants are coming to fulfill my wrath. So the gates of the earth are going to open in the ancient Babylonian area where this Shinar directive took place. And literally, Gibborim, giants, Nephilim, are going to come up out of the earth in judgment. So all I can do is say, get the book, read it. It's probably the most fascinating research, and sometimes scary, that we've ever produced through Defender Publishing House. If you get it at skywatchtv.com, there's the whole $200 package over there they're giving away. And so, but hopefully you will, whether you get it from us or Amazon or somebody else. Now, if you get it at Amazon, you're not going to get all that free stuff, but you could get it at Amazon, especially if you're in a different country, and shipping is an issue.
Well, Brother Tom, I appreciate you taking this time out of your very, very busy schedule to be with us here on Interstellar Realities Radio. It's about 5 till on the East Coast on this special edition here on May the 7th, 2015, and we're about 5 till 4 here on the East Coast with Brother Tom Horn. And I want to get a copy of this book. I know I got some of those talking points. I do not have a copy yet, but it is on my to-do list. And it just seems like your publishing company, Brother Tom, is pumping out books so fast, and the subject material is so thought-provoking and so intriguing. It's mesmerizing what you are doing in this time that we're living, and how relative all this information is, and how pertinent and how needed it is. And I don't know of too many other, I don't know of any. I mean, there may be one here, one there I'm just not aware of, but I don't know of anyone else that's putting this kind of information out to the general public. So thank you, my friend, and, man, just keep on keeping on.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Actually, we're producing less books now. A few years ago I was publishing 50 to 60 books a year, and I decided I did not want to just be a book mill. I only wanted to publish things that I thought had real meat and real importance, and that was when I formed Defender. Was really only a sub-label in my larger publishing house, and I gave away the other publishing house and took just the Defender label, and now I'm only publishing, 8 or 9, 10 at the most books per year, because I really want to focus on the stuff that is significant, that is cutting edge, that is important. One of the books I have coming out this year is by Bob McGinnis. He works at the Pentagon. And I can't say a whole lot yet about the work that he is doing, because we're trying to keep it hush-hush, but he is an analyst for the Pentagon, and he has a very, very important work that he intends to produce, and we're publishing it. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just take the most important stuff, zero in on what's really real, what's really meaty, give the church something that they can stand on, that also happens to have, even though some of these subject matters seem to be exotic, the theology is orthodox. Our theology is just bedrock Western evangelical Christianity. That's what it is. All right, Steve, thank you for having me on your program.
Hey, thank you, Brother Tom. You have a great day, and we look forward to having you again sometime in the future.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Brother Tom Horn joining us here on Interstellar Realities Radio.